So today I want to talk about a particular shir, and the shir that I want to share with you is Tehillim 119:54, which basically states a posuk that David sang, 119:54. Hoyu li chukecha bebeit megurai zemirot. And it's what's going on is Psalm 119 goes through from Aleph to Toph. It's an acrostic, and every letter has 3 verses. So when it came to Zion, Zion started as follows: Zemiros, hoyu li chukecha. Your chukecha, whatever chok means to David HaMelech, it means different things to different people. But let's say it's your statutes or your teachings or your Torah. Zemiros, they were like for me a song. Anything wrong with that? I don't think so. It's a beautiful extolling of to what extent David appreciates God's chokim in the house of my pilgrimage. Bebeit megurai, in the house of my pilgrimage, obviously meaning Beit HaMikdash, which he had basically instructed on, that they were that the Zemiros, there was, I would say in colloquial English, your teaching was like a song to me. It was like a song to me. Now, the American historian Cyrus Gordon, who died in 2001, wrote, "Our contemporaries have split the atom, reached the moon, and brought color TV to the common man." He didn't write about the internet yet because I guess it wasn't. The ancients were no less talented than today's people, but they often expressed their intelligence in different ways. They manipulated language so deftly that it often takes a modern scholar a long time to grasp the presence, let alone the subtleties of ancient riddles. And one poignant example of such ancient nuance in language is the existence in Hebrew of 2 terms for music, for song: Shira and Zimra, Shir and Zemer. Now, they are synonymous, but if we explore the differences between this pair of synonyms, we'll become attuned to the intricacies of biblical Hebrew language. The simplest way of differentiating Shira and Zimra is that Shira is verbal song. Oz Yoshia Moshe es hashira hazos. We don't have the song. I mean, we sing it to a certain trop, but that doesn't mean we know the musical original. It was clearly a song, es hashira hazos, but what we were transmitted was the words of the song. Zimra refers to instrumental music. So Zemiros hoya chukecha, when David says in Psalm 119:54, your Torah was like music, I think it doesn't mean that your Torah was a shir, because that is the Torah. The Torah is a shir, fine. But it was like music to my ears, like an instrumental, like an orchestral piece to my mind. Now, this understanding is supported by the Ibn Ezra, the Radak, the Sforno, and even the Gra. In fact, the Yiddish word klezmer, roughly meaning Jewish music, is actually a portmanteau of klei, kli, instruments, and zemer, music. Klezmer, kli, zemer. the Malbim explains that Zimra is somehow a higher, more intense form of song than Shira. We say that poetry is heightened prose. Well, then Shira has a level, but Zimra is a heightened form of song than Shira. He always writes that this is why whenever the two terms appear in tandem, Shira is always first and Zemer is always second. Where would we see that? We see that in the Tehillim. In the Tehillim, it says sometimes Mizmor Shir and sometimes Shir Mizmor. Why is that? Now, the Ibn Ezra says there's no difference between the two. Mizmor and Shir are both equal. But Reb Shlomo Pappenheim explains that when they're used side by side, the terms Mizmor and Shir assume specific technical meanings. The Shir, as we said, denotes the lyrics of a song. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbos. Mizmor denotes the tune and the melody of the song. Based on this, Rav Pappenheim explains that within a specific song, sometimes the word begin with before the tune, and sometimes the tune is played before the words. An interesting latter-day interpretation of when they're put side to side. Okay. Now I want to present to you the most extraordinary piece of Gemara, and I'm going to share my screen, if I can. Just tell me if you see it. And this comes from a Gemara in Sota. Now, Alan and I, over Shavuos, were learning this huge ma'amar of the Alter Rebbe from the Drush on Shavuos in the end of Vayikra. And so he alerted us to the fact of this very enigmatic Gemara. And if I can share that with you. Rava taught, it's a Gemara in Sota 35. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rava taught, why was David HaMelech punished with Uzzah's death? Okay. First of all, let's go back and see what Uzzah's death is all about. So I'm bringing up the Psukim from 2 Samuel 6. So David is in what we call Tellstone today, Kiryat Ye'arim. So it's just outside Jerusalem. And the ark has been there for a while. But now he feels he has conquered Jerusalem from the Philistines. And so he thinks it's time to bring the Aron HaKodesh, the ark, which has been in Kiryat Ye'arim, in the house of Abinadav. And the Kiryat Ye'arim is very hilly, as you know, from Tellstone. Vayarkivu et Aron Elokim. So they set on their way to bring it to Jerusalem on Al Agalah Chadasha, on a new cart, presumably because we didn't want anything that may have touched Tumah, and we wanted the Aron on a new cart. Vayiso'ehu, and they brought it out, mi beit Avinadav asher begiva, that was on the hill. Uzzah va'achyo b'nei Amino, and so the boys, Noagim et ha'agalah chadasha, they drive the new cart, so there are oxen pulling the cart, the Aron is on it, the two sons are driving the cart, probably whacking the the oxen and driving it in the right direction. Vayiso'eu mi beit Avinadav, so they bring it out of the house of Avinadav, asher begiva, a repetition of the first pasuk, im Aron ha'elokim, with the ark of God. Va'achyo holech lifnei Aron. The whole purpose of this pasuk, which is totally repetitive, is to stress the fact that it was Ahio that went before the Aron. Now, remember, later on, David is going to bring it much later on, because, in fact, something terrible happens and it doesn't get to Jerusalem. And he's dancing before the Aron, and Michal will criticize him for dancing. It's not pasnish for a king to do that. But here, much earlier on, David v'kol b'nei Beis Yisrael mesachakim lifnei Hashem, are playing instruments before God, b'kol atzei berosim, instruments made of cypress wood and with harps, ubikinorot, ubenervalim, a whole orchestra, ubetupim, ubenanane, ubetzilsalim, with timbrels and sistra and cymbals. Okay. Vayovo ad goren Nachon. They come to the threshing floor of Nachon, and something tragic happens. Vayishlach Uzo el Aron ha-Elohim. Uzo sees that one of the oxen are stumbling, and so the Aron is slipping off the wagon, and he runs up to put forth his hand to stop it from falling. Vayochazbo, and he grabs hold of the Aron. Ki shotmu abakar, the oxen were stumbling. Vayicharaf Adonai ba'Uzzah, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah. Vayakehu sham Elokim alasal, and God smote him there for his error. Vayomos sham, and he died there im Aron Elokim. What was the error? Well, we're told different things touching the Aron. And then David is very upset. Okay. So now let's go back to the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rava taught, for what reason was David punished with Uzzah's death? Now you would expect him to say some sin, some this, some that. No, he was punished because he called the matters of Torah songs. As it says, well, our posuk, as we had quoted, Zemiros chukecho, because he said, Zemiros chukecho hoyuli. Zemiros hoyuli chukecho bebeit gurai. Your statues were my songs in the house of my pilgrimage. I mean, there's another reason that's glaring, as we'll see in the Gemara, why he was punished. So the question I have is, why did you have to add this? What service does it help? What's the reason? Divrei tova shekosu behen hatif einecho bo ve'eineno. If you set your eyes upon it, Proverbs, it's already gone, meaning it's fleeting. You have to grab it. You have to steig. You have to study it until it goes into your memory. It's not something fleeting like a song. Ato kore oson zemiros? You have the gall to call Torah songs? Zimra? Not even Shira. Shira I can understand. Hazinu, Oz Yoshia, at least there's a text there. But you're calling it Zimra, an instrumental piece of music? You're reducing Torah to mere Zimra? Hareini machshilcha bedova she'afilu tinoko shel beis rabban yodinoso. Wow, what a put down. I am gonna make you stumble. I will make you forget something that even little kinderlich in the Weitzner Cheder know by heart. As it says in Bamidbar, Uvelei kahos lo natan ki avodas hakodesh. The Bnei Kahat didn't have to do all the work in the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because they had the sole responsibility of carrying the ark b'ketefov on their shoulders. Ki avodas hakodesh. Ve'ihu isaya ba'agalta. And you made a stupid error and you put it on a wagon. You should have got a bunch of Leviim and put it on their shoulders. Why didn't you? Because you forgot. I made you forget. And I made you forget because you reduced Torah to a zimra, to a mere instrumental piece. It's a stunning piece of Gemara. 5th century. What are you talking? You're taking the Pashtus is that Uzzah touched the Aron. Whether David knew it was right or wrong, then the rabbis say, you know why he died? Not because he touched the Aron. Well, anyone who saw Raiders of the Lost Ark saw how powerful the Aron was. It shot out bolts of lightning. The Pashtus is he touched it, and therefore God was upset. The drush is, well, how could he have touched it? Because it was an anagala. Why is it an anagala? It should have been on the Levium's shoulders. Then comes the Gemara and kvetches out of this a totally irrelevant piece of criticism. That's a real put down of Dodav HaMelech, because if you look in Psalm 119, it's just extolling God. I just love the Torah. It's like music to my ears. It's a metaphor. And you took it literally and say, yeah, you think Torah is just an instrumental piece? Really? I'm going to make you forget that, Torah. Not only that, I'm going to make you forget that which kids in the Weitzner Cheder know when they're 5 years old, that the Levium, and they make pictures and bring home to their parents of the Levium carrying the Aron on their shoulders. You understand that when Alan and I were reading this, I was struggling with this all over Shavuos. David is punished for singing. David is punished for an instrumental work, or calling Torah an instrumental work. Okay, so let's dig deeper and let's try and understand what this means. So we go to the Mefarshim, and if I can share with you, firstly, the Mefarshim that struggle with this. The Rashi, of course, says David made a mistake about something that even children at their Rebbe's school know about, because the sacred work was incumbent upon them, that they had to carry it on their shoulders. Okay. And because David said, your statutes were like songs for me, Zemiros chukecha hoyu li, he was punished to come to this and to have Uzzah die through his hand. Therefore, when they brought the ark from the house of Oved, they brought it by shoulder, because in Divrei HaYomim it says, when they finally took it from Oved to Yerushalayim much later, he said, you, the heads of households of the Levites, you and your brothers, sanctify yourselves, bring up the ark, because the first time you did not. It says that in Divrei HaYomim. Okay. The Metzudas David says, B'kol ha'makom asher yisi ger sham hayu nechshavim li chukecha kashir v'zemer. He says that all the places, megurecha, taking it hyperliterally, all the places that I was a fugitive, how did I survive when I was a fugitive? Hayu nechshavim li chukecha kashir v'zemer. He puts the two together. He gives it a respectful twist. Shir is a text, zemer is an instrument. So he adds, not zemiros hayuli, but shir v'zemru hayuli. I love it. Meaning, that kept me going. They were like music to my ears. The Torah kept me going. It gave me sustenance and hope. Okay. So let's now share with you the Chasam Sofer, an interesting Chasam Sofer. By the way, not always is David HaMelech criticized for using that word. There is a medrash in Shir Hashirim that praises Zimra and compares Torah to the Zimra. There are other places in Medrash that do that. Now let's look at so this isn't unique. It's quite not unique. Now let's look at the Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer is actually writing on this parish in Gittin, 60. Okay. Soiter, David HaMelech nenesh al she'ama zmiras hayu li chukecha bebeit megurai. And now the Chasam Sofer tells us I know. I also have a problem with this. And the Heilige Chassam Sofer says, Afal Gav de Chol Torah Ikrei Shira. The whole Torah, especially the Netziv, is very meduyak in Oz Yoshir Moshe. It's a beautiful Netziv in which he says the whole Torah is a shir. Hazinu Asher Shamayim. I want you to put this song of Hazinu into the children's mouth to remind them when things go awry that I promised you that if you do it well, fine. If you don't, you won't. So the Netziv says on Hazinu that the whole of the Torah is a shir, not just Hazinu. So the Chassam Sofer says, even though the entire Torah is considered an instrumental piece or a sacred text of song, da shira lechud v'zimiros lechud, there's a difference. David HaMelech says, Zemiros chukechol hayoli. They were Zemiros. So don't mix up Zimra with Shira. Ki Shira eineno hanigun shemenagnim. Shira is not the instrumental part, elo ma'amar. O katuv mesudar keshura b'shura habinyan. Al derech she'amru kol hashiras leveno al gav leveno. So Shira, Zimra is almost like instrumental, freewheeling. I am just like jazz, improvising, right? But it's a mama or katuv mesuda. It's like a sheet music. It is musical sheet work. It's a language of Zimra. It's the language of Zimra, of musical notes, levena, atachas levena, like the musical scale, brick upon brick. And it's the shape of music, because levena, tachas levena is the way, and we've talked about this, the Sofer writes the Sefer Torah. The regular way is line up, brick upon brick. Then sometimes it's brick, space, brick. And sometimes it's brick, space, brick, space, brick, space. Like some bricks that are done on the side of a house to adorn it with spaces in between. And it's the shape of the shira that counts, because it points to a certain type of music. So we sing Oz Yoshia different to Hazinu. Okay. Shehu Sidu B'Shuras Habinyan. It's like the bricklayers' lines. V'achshav nohagu l'seder b'charuzin hayuduim. Now we are accustomed to do it in lines like we know the Sofer does it. V'hanavim hayu lahem sidur asher lo nodar lonu. The Leviim had their own way of writing music, which is not known to us. Although there's a story of the Kalavar Rebbe, that the Kalavar Rebbe was in the Carpathian Mountains, and he would listen to the flute of the shepherds. And he was so taken with it, he claimed that they had taken it from the Leviim. And so he would give a kopek every time he heard a different tune, and he'd give it to the shepherd, and the shepherd would forget it. And he would bring it back to the base medrash. So the Kalavar Nigunim, and the most famous one is Solo Kokosh Moy. Solo Kokosh Moy. Haya, haya, hoy. Haya, ya, 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 va, 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 yamai, yamai, ma. The Kalavar Hasidim and the Munkacher Hasidim sing that by Shalashudas. It's the holiest time of Shabbos, and they sing that because of the Rebbe who, now actually on NPR, there was one guy who, a reporter, who went to the Carpathian Mountains and taped the songs of the Carpathian shepherds. And if you go to NPR or YouTube, just look it up. And one of the songs is Solo Kokosh Moy. I freaked out. They didn't forget it. He bribed them, but they didn't forget it. They still had the song. I think that's what he means. We don't have the songs of the Leviim. Mikol mokum shirahu hasidur. The shira is a order. It's musicology. It has rules to it. Hanerach be'erech yadua. There's a whole history of the tradition. There's Baroque. There's Romantic. It's musicology. It has a science to it. And only afterwards does the orchestra come, take the sheet music, and play it. Remember, in the time of the Chassam Sofer, we already had classical music, and he must have heard it. He must have heard music coming from the churches in Presburg. Behine parasha b'Torah v'Meseres b'Noyer shiras Yuduin kagon shiras hayam v'azinu, and we see in the Torah that there are definitely songs, and we know it because of the way they are structured. Ukadoma nikra shira. Now that's called shira. It's a heightened form of music with its formal structure. And therefore, it's appropriate to call the whole of Torah shira. Okay. Aval chumash echad lo nikra shira. So if it's the chamishos sforim, then we can say it's a shira. But if it's just one isolated sefer, one scroll, that's not appropriate to call it shira. But because there's a balance between it all. There's a musical balance. Omdom David HaMelech nenash. Now we get to our question. Why on earth was David HaMelech punished? Why did the Gemara in Sota go through this entanglement and this drag cop all the way around to explain why he forgot the halacha of carrying the Aron? David HaMelech nenash al she'ama zmiras haya lichu kecha bebeit megurai. Oh my gosh, he used the wrong terminology. He said Zimra instead of Shira. He was punished for reducing Torah to a mere instrumental improvisation instead of being the formal structure that has a musical analysis attached to it. Dazzling. The Chidushe of the Chassam Sofer. Now I want to take you to what Alan and I were learning, and that is sharing with you a very dense Torah from the Alter Rebbe that we learned in Likutei Torah, but I'm going to just share with you a few lines from the Kuntras Achron from the Tanya, the very last collection of essays. This is essay number 6 at the back of the Tanya, which encapsulated 4 pages of Likutei Torah that took us, how long, Alan? About 4 sessions to wade through it. Ki ha-Torah nitna bebechinas ponim v'ocher. He's going to end up explaining why David was punished. Now we're going deeper into a kind of mystical explanation. HaTorah nitna bebechinas ponim v'ocher. Now, you know that everything in life, the spheros and the Torah represented by the spheros, is given from the external and the internal. Ponim is ponim beponim, that's seeing the pnimius. So everyone at Har Sinai spoke to God ponim beponim, and later on when Miriam and Aaron are criticizing, God says, Lo kain avdi, no, my servant, ponim beponim, we speak each other like a man and his friend. Ponim beponim means the pnimius, you're seeing, you can't see God, but you see the pnimius of what he's saying. Ponim, and ocha means the externals, front and back, because it says the flying scroll of Zechariah was written ponim v'ocha, meaning, according to Chazal, on both sides you could see it. Okay, Ulafi shetofas David bebechinas acharayim. What was David's mistake? He grabbed Torah from the acharayim, meaning from the externals. He didn't go to the pnimius. Why? Well, we'll see in a minute. Lochein nenash b'shichecha. Now, the Alter Rebbe, in a dazzling interpretation that no one else mentioned, he was punished midah keneged midah. But what's the midah of forgetfulness, senility? Why were you punished by a thought block where you didn't realize the halacha that you shouldn't put it on a wagon and you should carry it on the shoulders of the Levites? In what way is that a midah keneged midah? Lefisha tofas David bebechinas acharayim lakach nenash b'shichecha. He was punished with a thought block. Haba bebechinas acharayim, because the Arizal says that anytime you have a thought block, and I'm getting many more of them, my Torah is becoming more and more acharayim, because it's something that's external to you, so it comes right off. It's not something you struggled with that you'll remember. Something that you said in passing, you'll easily forget. V'nela mimeno lefi shah. So he momentarily forgot the halacha, because and what halacha? Avodas hakodesh aleim b'kotev yil. The Aaron priesthood should carry the Aaron on their shoulders. He forgot the halacha, but he forgot the halacha because that's the punishment in kind. What's the punishment in kind? Lechaber uleyachet et haktafayim. Remember, it has to go on their shoulders. What's the shoulders? It's a joint that you can actually put together, like by abducting your shoulders, you can actually bring the scapula together. Leyached et haktefayim, which means what? The bechina of acharayim. The shoulders are the acharayim; they're behind you, and the point was, your job is to put the external, connect it to the internal, the ponim and the ochor, the external and the internal, and you settled for the externals, something that's fleeting. So I'm going to punish you with the external, which is a thought block. Now, why do I know that the Aaron is an external? Shem bisham nimshachu haluchos sheba'aron. Ah, dazzling. The luchos are inside the Aron. The outside of the Aron is just the external. You can't settle for that. So what was his sin? You settled for the externalities of halacha. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the misnagdim. You settle for the behavioral, the externals, the manifestations of Torah in public, the steiging in Torah. But you didn't go into the panemius, the inner work, which is what? The luchos of the Aron. And what is the characteristics of the inside of the Aron? That the luchos could be seen on either side as engraved all the way through. So it says, Anochi, Aleph, Nun, Chof, Yud on one side. Normally, if I turn it round and it's hewn through, I would see Yud, Nun, Chof, Aleph. You didn't. There was a miracle. And there was a miracle because every way you looked at it, it was ponim. The Aron represented the pneumius of the externals of Torah that contained within it the pneumius of Torah. And how do I know it was the pneumius? Because they were hewn right through, and the miracle was each way you saw them, there was no ponim and ocher. It was ponim all the way through. And because you settled for the externalities of the Aron, and you didn't go into the pneumius, you are being punished with settling for the external, which means you will have that thought block, which comes from just a mere surface understanding of Torah and not allowing it to impregnate you and struggle with it on the inside. And yesterday, Yehuda will remember that we also learned from the Moreh Naim, and the Moreh Naim I will end up with because I think he takes it even to a more radical level, although the rabbi didn't agree with me. And let's just learn that and then we'll end. The Moreh Naim says something very interesting, which goes along with the Alter Rebbe, which goes along with my theory that the Moreh Naim is Chabad light, because he does in 2 paragraphs what took Alan and I 3 days of steiging. And he says that Torah requires Yegia Rabbah. It requires to internalize Torah, and to struggle with Torah on the inside requires much toil. Zeh bechinas Leah. Zeh bechinas Leah. So we have Rochel and we have Leah. Leah besod Yegia Samachshava. It is the toil of struggling with the head to internalize the externalities of the oron and come to the pnimius of the luchos. So what is happening is that we are being invited into the paradigm of Leah and Rachel as 2 archetypes of approaching Torah. And Yaakov is sitting between the 2. So Leah is the secret, the mystery of Yegias HaMachshava. And you need that l'taken amidos, to fix your character defects. So Torah is a spiritual pathway that allows me the opportunity to use it to fix. It's a spiritual recovery program to fix my character defects and to lahofcham bebechinas atomid amur b'sov. V'Leah bishlosho nil'ah. Wow, what a pun. Leah comes from, if I take the nifal of Leah and make it into a verb, not a proper noun, it means the word weary, fatigue, exhausted. Shehi ayefut v'yigia, a notion of exhaustion because of toil at the end of the day. And now he comes to the spiritual program that he is asking of us. Ukasher Adam Ose Kain, Umasakein Hamidos. If a person is able to go inside the Oron, inside himself, right? We are all an Oron, and we all have a neshama, which is our luchos, or our heart, our luchos libecha, on the luchos of your heart, and you're able to fix the resentments and fix the addictions and fix all the schmutz that's in there and fix everything, right? Umatakein Hamidos, through this toil. It's not easy, he says. Recovery is hard. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamshich alav rachmanos. You get a gift from what Reb Nachman calls the treasury of unearned gifts. And rachmanos, which I consider grace. Grace comes down. Ki pesach harachamim midas Yaakov. So Yaakov is strong between Rachel and Leah. If Yaakov can face Leah, then he is able to do that inner work. Leah isn't Leah. Leah is the approach. Yaakov is in each of us. So if we, in the meter of Yaakov, can face Leah, and remember, Leah sees that she's hated. No one wants to do that kind of work. Leah Eine Rakos, her eyes were filled and dim because of tears, of crying. I don't want to go to Esau. I don't want to be taken by the other side. Who wants to do that kind of inner work? Likutei Torah of Reb Nosson says that is tefillah. Leah is tefillah and Rachel is Torah. No one wants to do that inner work. But if you do it, then mamshich olav rachmanos. Grace descends upon you. Ki posach harachamim midas Yaakov. The opening of rachamim, which is Tiferes, is Jacob. V'lochein nikra alma diskasia. Now he says Rachel and Leah are 2 paradigms: outer, inner, hidden, revealed. Oron, luchos. Leah is alma diskasio. It's the world of the hidden. She's hidden inside. Kizehu amidos, amechusim begashmius amidos. Because within the gashmius of midos are supern midos, and they've been dragged down into the blotter, into the gashmius. The tzorich likones alem, and you've got to go into the blotter and to fix and to refine and to redo and metakein. And that requires lots of toil. Ubechina zu nimshech me'adas. And the only way you can do that is with that luchos, which is das, which is God consciousness. Ki al yedei hadas yodea umevin zeh. It requires God consciousness, an opening to something divine, something transcendent, to realize when I look inside that I'm not a schizophrenic, I am a neshama, a kaimimal that's put in me, and that the Gashmias and the Nefesh HaBahamis has to be refined. I need it to survive. I need it to do my avodas Hashem. It just needs refining. And requiring das gives me that opening, that sensitivity to realize what I have to do. And now, on the other hand, her sister, Yesh Alma Disgalia, there is the revealed world. V'shamhu hatov v'hara b'bechira. Remember that Rachel was Yefas Toa v'Yefas Mareh. She was beautiful. V'Yaakov ahaves Rachel. She is the externalities. She's the oron. She is everything that I can do and get away with. And I've done my share. I've done my daf yomi. I've done my shokling. I've done all the externals. And I think, look at me, beautiful, right? Absolutely dazzling. So Leah is buried in the hidden recesses of Machpelah. Machpelah is the cave upon a cave. It's kaful. And when they opened up Hebron in 67, before the Arabs got to them, the archaeologists saw one cave on top of another. So she's buried in a cave within a cave. She's hidden in the recesses of our souls. But Rachel, Alma Discalia, where's she buried? Beproshas Hadrachim. It says, and I message when Jacob is confessing to Joseph why he had to bury her not in the Marat Achpelah. In Pashas Miketz, he says, Mesa alai Rachel. She died on me on the way, and she was buried. Beproshas Hadrachim. Bethlehem is where the road splits. Proshas Hadrachim, he says. What is the Proshas Hadrachim? Bechinas Beis Rachim, Tovara. That's all the externals. I gave stocker. I didn't kick out the Meshulach. I did this. Everyone can see what I'm doing. That's very Alma Discalia. That's very overt. It's outward. It's the way I'm perceived by the public. That's Rachel. The Leah Nikbra B'mara Alma Discasia. So then he adds, to end up with the last few lines, which is the punchline, that David HaMelech in Psalm 69 says, can you please show me my kitzi, my end, when I'm going to die? The end of my days, show me. I'm desperate. Remember, 69 is very early on in Psalms. The Baruch Hu Mimin Shol, he's on the chase, he's on the run, and he's just desperate and he's giving up. And at least I'll know then what my end will be. Just tell me. I can't take it anymore. Now, look what the Mori 9 does with that. Kol zman she'adam meruchab min Hashem. This is the litmus test, my friends. This is a very high bar that he's creating for us. This is the revolution of Hasidus. It raises the stakes. You can't just get away with the externals anymore after reading this stuff. Ki kol zman she'adam meruchab min Hashem. Then what is it? So psychological. Doime be'enov. He's from, he was a Bekasher, he shokels, he does the daf yomi, he goes to every single minyan, and he looks at himself in the mirror and he says, look at me, Zakai. I remember when you get to the next world, they'll tell you if you're chiyuv or Zakai, whether you, I'm okay, I'm merit, I'm worthy. V'kiyem hakol. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the people around him. Ve'enu choser be'enov. He doesn't think there's any lack. There's no sense of existential dread, of any spiritual crisis going on in him. Ve'enu choser be'enov klum. And now he says the following. I want to give you a litmus test of how you know that you're on the spiritual path. because you ain't started yet. You're still like David HaMelech, Zemiros hayu chukili. Your chukim were like songs, like an improvised song. It's all external. I'm behaving very good. I'm Zakai. And he's punished for that because he didn't look inside the Oron, into the luchos of his heart. But now that you start to go inside, Kol ma shenichnas yoser margish yoser chesrono. Wow. Sounds like Kafka. The degree to which I start digging into the schmutz, going into that dark cave, the heart of darkness inside, never mind the external behavior. The degree to which I go, how will I know I'm succeeding? Is the degree to which margish I feel even more lacking. So the tzaddik tells Noam Elimelech tells us all the time, is constantly looking at himself as worse than any other human being. V'zehu siman ha'oved Hashem. That's the only sign that you are an Eved Hashem. When you look in that mirror and go, I'm waking up today. Remember, the Yid HaKodesh was called the Yid because every day he woke up and looked in the mirror and said, Ich bin a goy. I have to be Megayer. I have to start the whole process again. I have to first become Jewish, and then I have to accept Torah. And he didn't get to Shacharis till 1 p.m. in the afternoon. He was famous. That's why he was called the Heilige Yid. He was Megayer. He converted every single day. Why? That's the litmus test if you are an advocate, you are a believer, and you are a worshiper, and you're on the spiritual path. Now, you want to know what dvekas is? It's not the way we talk about it. Oh, yeah, I'm attached. Yeah, I love it. It's the distance. Dvekas means the paradoxical distance between me and the Ribono Shalom, like Reb Nachman talks about in the story of the song, The Heart and the Spring. The moment they come slightly close together, the spring goes out of view and the sun doesn't shine its rays. So they're stuck in this constant sense of longing. Margish Yosef Chisaron Bavoisa, Yosef Dovok Hashem. My dvekas to the Eibishter is my sense of inadequacy getting worse and worse and worse as my avodas Hashem improves. And that's what what David HaMelech is saying. Adar, das, give me that God consciousness. Me chodeloni. Chodel meaning here not when is my end or what's my flaw, but what am I lacking? Show me ma ani. Be the mirror to me, Ribono Shalom, to show me what I'm lacking, because I understand that the degree to which I lack is the degree to which I really grasp that you are divine, I am human, and I'm in that constant tension, that paradox. Have a wonderful week, and we should be able to sing Shir Chadash, that we'll get out of all these problems, and that there'll be a Shir Chadash, there'll be a new song, the Song of Geula.